Welcome back to Boring History for Sleep, where the past stretches out gently like a long, warm breeze whispering through time. Tonight, we drift softly into the cradle of Mesopotamian civilization. The city of Babylon, a place wrapped in dry heat and sacred silence. A city where mud brick met monument, where God spoke through omens, and where the rhythm of life was measured not in hours, but in shadows, offerings, and the slow churn of the Euphrates River. This isn't the Babylon of epic tales or wrathful kings. This is the quiet Babylon of cracked clay, slow footsteps, and early sunrises over brown rooftops. We'll start by imagining life not as a ruler, not as a hero, but as someone in the background, someone ordinary, someone real. A place where the gods watched from tall ziggurats, but most people, like you, lived low to the ground, in courtyards of dust, noise, and effort. Let your eyes grow heavy as we gently step into this ancient world, permanently stained with fine gray dust, the kind that gets between the folds of your skin and never quite leaves. This is Babylon. Not yet the grandeur of myths, but growing, always growing. Let's begin, as always, by placing you there. The year is somewhere around 1700 BCU. Chew a few dry dates, sip thin barley beer, and wipe your mouth with the back of your wrist. You live in the southern reaches of Mesopotamia, in a neighborhood of narrow alleys and thick, sun-baked walls. You, however, are not growing. You're a potter. It smells faintly of smoke and sweat, a scent you've grown so used to it hardly registers. And your hands, well, your hands know clay more intimately than they know water. They're chapped, cracked. Every morning begins the same. You wake before the light fully returns. The sleeping mat beneath you is coarse, made from woven reeds. You stretch your back, stiff from sleeping on your side, curled tight against the cool night. Outside, the city breathes slowly. The roosters have already started, and a dog somewhere barks once, then silence again. You step into the courtyard. The air is already warm, and your feet meet the packed earth with a soft crunch. There is no breakfast, not in the way you might imagine. And then, it's time to work. Your small workshop is a shaded lean-to beside your home, stacked with half-formed vessels. Jugs, bowls, lamps, all lined up like quiet, drying children. You kneel on the ground, where your knees find grooves carved by habit. The spinning wheel is simple, just a stone flywheel turned by foot. It creaks a little when you begin, and your leg pulses rhythmically as you press it into motion. You wedge it with your palms, leaning your full body into the motion. It's not sacred. To store grain, to carry water, to offer incense to the gods. But it's necessary. Over and over, you fold and press, until the lumps soften into something usable. The clay is from the riverbank, heavy, damp, and coarse until you've worked it through. It's not glamorous. People need pots, but there are hundreds of potters in Babylon, each competing for space in the busy market near the temple gate. That old dragon of a structure. You make about 12 pots a day. if your hands don't cramp, if the wheel doesn't jam, if your children don't interrupt asking for more water. Sometimes they crack in the kiln. The kiln. Ah, yes. It's squat, wide, and built from mud brick. You fire it once a week, using dried reeds and dung for fuel. Other days, you walk home with more pots than you left with, your stomach echoing. When it lights, the smoke is thick, sour, and burns your eyes. You listen to the neighbors argue about water rights or temple tithes. A crier passes by announcing a new edict from the palace. Something about canal maintenance or a new god as feast. 1 shekel for entry, another for stall space. And maybe, just maybe, a bribe if you want a good position near the temple traffic. You squint through the heat to watch the flames dance inside, hoping the temperature stays just right. Too low and the pots stay soft. You are not remembered in any great tablet or epic tale. You shield your eyes with a fold of cloth, sip from your water skin, and pray to the goddess Ishtar for shade. People haggle. Clay is plain. Clay doesn't sparkle. Children knock things over. A merchant beside you, selling perfumes, draws more eyes with his bright linen and cinnamon-scented oils. It's too high, and they warp like melting fruit. The streets are dusty, uneven, and filled with traders shouting prices, goats bleating, and the occasional priest walking with studied calm. The heat clings to your skin even long after the fire dies. And then comes the market. You tie your wares together with rough hemp cord, sling them over your shoulder, and make your way to the city's main square. At the market gate, you must pay a tax. You sell your pots slowly. You don't blame them. By midday, the heat is near unbearable. Sometimes you sell enough to buy a cut of dried fish and some onions for stew. Evenings are short. You patch broken vessels. You help your wife grind flour. And as night falls, you settle back on your mat. Your hands ache. Your back is tight. And the dust from the wheel still clings to your hairline. You are not a scribe. You are not a priest, but you are a potter. And in Babylon, that means you endure, just as the wheel keeps turning. So do you. And so, the day ends. Slow, warm, and worn down like the smooth edge of a water jug. His sun rises again in Babylon, the same sun that has climbed the sky for 1,000 years and will for thousands more. But in this moment, this early morning in ancient Mesopotamia, something different stirs in the palace. A man is writing laws, or rather, his scribes are etching them into dark stone, carefully, slowly, pressing wedge-shaped cuneiform into the smooth black basalt, as if the gods themselves are watching. That man is King Hammurabi. You've likely heard of him, though perhaps only through whispers of the code that bears his name. A code of an eye for an eye, yes, but also of grain, wages, inheritance, irrigation, and stolen oxen. But tonight, we won't rush through the drama of justice. We'll drift gently through his life and the strange, measured world he built. Close your eyes, if they aren't already closed. Let the clatter of the potter's market fade, and picture instead a long hallway of cool, shaded stone, flickering with torchlight. echoing softly with the sandals of scribes. This is the palace of Hammurabi. A quiet rise. Hammurabi wasn't born into empire. When he took the throne around 1792 BCE, Babylon was just one city among many, and quiet. He didn't roar like a lion, not at first. He negotiated, he studied, he waited, not yet great, not yet feared, not yet remembered. Still, one hand raised in respect, the other resting on his chest. But Hammurabi was careful. He strengthened walls, dug canals, debt, marriage, slavery, farming, fees for broken tools, fines for lazy workers, penalties for false accusations, compensation for lost property, dowries, ransoms, even rules about beer taverns. Order, predictability. Listened to merchants complain and priests scheme. He wrote letters to neighboring kings, polite but firm, and made alliances one thread at a time. He was not feared yet. He was known, and that was enough. A city of rules. A tall, carved stele over 7 feet high, placed where the people could see it. As Babylon grew, slowly, steadily, it needed more than soldiers. It needed structure. So Hammurabi began to shape a new idea. Not rule by whim or tradition, but rule by law. The Code of Hammurabi wasn't the first set of laws in Mesopotamia, but it was the most visible, the most symbolic. Picture it. Dark stone against sun-baked clay walls. A column of commands, etched in soft language but hard consequences. At the top of the stele sits Hammurabi himself, shown receiving the laws from Shamash, the sun god and deity of justice. A quiet image, regal, and beneath that, the code begins. 282 laws. About theft, so many beer taverns. Gentle justice, rigid rhythm. You might be wondering, was it fair? That's a question too loud for this hour. The code wasn't just by modern standards. It divided people by class. Owilu, Mushkenu, and Wardu. It gave more weight to the wealthy, less to the poor. Harsh punishments, hands cut, lives taken, were meted out when harm was done to a superior. But it also offered protection, especially for women and children. A woman abandoned by her husband could keep her dowry. A child harmed by a careless builder's collapse might find justice through compensation. And most of all, the code offered predictability. You knew what would happen. You knew what was expected. A woman presents a piece of silver, claiming her neighbor borrowed it but never returned it. And in a world of floods, famine, and fickle gods, that kind of certainty was a bomb. A day in the court. Imagine now a quiet day in a Babylonian court. Not a grand hall, but a shaded courtyard with benches. Then speaks. A scribe records testimony on a small clay tablet. 2 men argue over a donkey. Scribes studied it, compared it, borrowed from it. The judge, calm, deliberate, consults the tablet, turns it over in his hand, whispers to the priest beside him, not loudly, not with drama. No great monument, no grand tomb. Stored in museums, whispered in classrooms, echoed in the idea that laws should be known. that power should be defined, that society should have shape. You feel the hush of twilight in this ancient city, just the rhythm of justice unfolding. The law lives on Hammurabi's reign, stretched over for decades. He died gently, we'll say, having expanded his kingdom far beyond Babylon. From the Persian Gulf to Mari, he ruled not just with soldiers, but with structure. His code lived on, even after his empire faded. Copies of it were found centuries later in other cities. And millennia later, a version of it still survives. Carved in basalt, but Hammurabi himself, he rests in quiet obscurity. Just his name, and the still weight of a stone stele. As the palace fades into the warm dusk, the torches flicker and the scribes roll up their scrolls. Hammurabi is gone, but his code remains. A ghost of order drifting through time. The stars begin to appear above Babylon's flat rooftops, and somewhere nearby, a potter closes his kiln. Let your mind slow down again. Breathe in slowly, breathe out softly, and imagine a distant place that may have never existed. A place spoken of in scrolls, whispered by travelers, painted in poems, but never confirmed in stone. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. You've likely heard the name, maybe in passing. One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But unlike the pyramids or the lighthouse of Alexandria, the Hanging Gardens have no ruins to show us. No trace in the soil, no foundation beneath the sand, only stories. And tonight, we drift through those stories, not to prove or disprove, but to feel them gently, and fall asleep under vines that may have never grown. The river and the walls, let's begin, as many stories do, by the water. Canals branch off like veins, feeding the gardens and fields of this ancient city. The Euphrates River winds softly past the city of Babylon, its banks lined with reeds and slow-swaying palms, and above them, walls. Tall, layered, patterned with glazed tiles and protective towers. Walls that encircle Babylon like a quiet embrace. Inside those walls, beneath the shadow of a great ziggurat, the temple tower of Marduk was said to be something strange. A mountain, not a real mountain, but a man-made one. Stone terraces stacked like a wedding cake, lush with greenery, cool with mist, dripping with ivy and flowering vines. The Hanging Gardens, not hanging like ropes or vines, but hanging in the older sense, suspended, overhanging, terraced, rising in steps, blooming in layers. A garden that defied the desert. The queen's homesickness, one story says they were built for love. According to later Greek historians, like Strabo and Diodorus, the gardens were crafted by King Nebuchadnezzar II, around 600 BCE. His wife, Amytis, was from Media, a mountainous land to the north. She missed the forests, the hills, the green world of her childhood. And so, the king made her a mountain, a quiet gift of stone and soil, an echo of her homeland. Her fingers brushing the petals of foreign flowers grown just for her. A love letter written in shade and water. Imagine that. A wife, wrapped in linen, standing barefoot on a sun-warmed terrace. Above her, palms stretch to the sky. Below her, fountains murmur. And in the distance, Babylon flickers under the rising sun, engineering a dream. The gardens, if they existed, would have been a marvel of engineering. Raised terraces built with mud bricks and stone, waterproofed with layers of bitumen and red mats, filled with deep, rich soil brought in from the countryside. Water had to be lifted from the river, perhaps with a chain pump or screw-like system, and carried upward to irrigate each level. No easy task. But this was Babylon, where irrigation was everything, where canals, dikes, and water wheels were part of daily life, where managing rivers was as important as worshiping gods. A garden like this wasn't impossible, just ambitious and beautiful. A walk among the leaves now. Let yourself walk through the imagined hanging gardens. Feel the coolness underfoot, damp stone beneath your sandals. Hear the splash of water trickling from level to level. To your left, fig trees and soft blue morning glories. To your right, pomegranate blossoms, red against the ivy. The air is fragrant, not strong, not sweet, just subtly perfumed with growing things. You pass a statue of a lion, half covered in moss, a quiet shrine tucked between planters. A small pool where frogs sit motionless in the reeds. There are no crowds, no laughter. Just a gardener, half asleep in the shade, brushing leaves from a stair. Everything here breathes slowly, just like you. A mystery, unsolved, and yet, the hanging gardens may have never existed in Babylon at all. No Babylonian text mentions them. No ruins match their description. No tablets describe their waterworks. Some scholars think the Greeks confused cities, that the gardens were in Nineveh, not Babylon. Others believe they were only poetic metaphors. Lush temple courtyards described so vividly they became legend. But it doesn't matter, because for centuries people dreamed of them. They sketched them in manuscripts, painted them in oil, described them to children by candlelight, built them in model form in museums and city parks. The hanging gardens may never have touched the sky, but they bloomed in the imagination of history. And here, in this gentle hour, they bloom again for you. A garden for sleep as the imaginary sun sets on the garden terraces. The palms sway lightly in the evening breeze. You sit beneath a lattice of flowering vines, watching the stars appear between the leaves. You don't need to know if the gardens were real. You only need to know they are peaceful. A soft thought in a hard world. A quiet maybe in the long noise of history. And with that, we gently close this part of the journey. The hanging gardens fade into night. The air cools, and a soft breeze carries us onward, toward another world. Another roof under the stars. Another rhythm of life. The fires of the potter's kill are long extinguished. The terraces of the hanging gardens now rest under twilight shadow. And as Babylon settles into its slow desert night, we turn our gaze upward, not toward the gods this time, but toward the stars, 'cause high above the dusty streets, above the shop stalls and temple courtyards, there is another kind of life in ancient Babylon. A quieter one, a cleaner one, a life of watching, waiting, writing and knowing. This is the world of the king's astronomers. And tonight, under the drifting stars, you'll walk softly into their chambers and glimpse what it was like to live not by bread or clay, but by the moon and Venus and omens in the sky. The quiet rooms imagine a quiet wing of a temple, far from the noisy markets. Stone walls lined with narrow shelves, low tables scattered with tablets. A smoky lamp burns gently in the corner, casting a flickering amber glow. You step softly on reed mats. The air smells faintly of beeswax and dust. Here, in this still room, scribes and scholars kneel side by side, draped in clean robes, their hair oiled and neatly tied, and in their hands styluses, pressing gently into soft, damp clay. Each stroke measured, each line a recording of the sky. Watching the heavens, the king's astronomers were more than stargazers. They were record keepers of the divine. To them, the heavens weren't random. The stars and planets were messages. Each appearance of Venus, each eclipse, each strange alignment or blood-red moon was a whisper from the gods. And so, night after night, they watched. They climbed narrow temple stairs and leaned over sun-warmed parapets. They gazed upward into skies untouched by modern lights. Skies so dark, so vast, the stars seemed to breathe. And with every movement in the heavens, they made a mark. The rhythm of their lives, the life of an astronomer, was one of rhythm and silence. They rose before dawn to catch the morning star. They scribbled notes in the dark by the glow of fish oil lamps. They lived by the movements of celestial bodies, not clocks or calendars. A Venus appearance might mean harvest blessings. A solar eclipse, a danger to the king. But always, it was rhythm. Always, it was patient. No fire in the kill. No shouting in the streets. Only the slow turning of the cosmos and the steady scratch of stylus on clay. The tablets and the math, and then there were the tablets, hundreds of them. Each a slab of clay, soft at first, then baked gently in the sun or fire-hardened for permanence. On them, rows and rows of symbols, star names, planetary cycles, simple math, dates, and omens. They didn't just track stars, they predicted them. The Babylonians were among the first people to use mathematical models to chart the heavens. They noticed cycles, patterns. They knew when Venus would vanish and when she would rise again. And so, in a soft-lit room with walls of clay, they wrote the future. Quietly, without fanfare, without even parchment or ink. Just careful hands, cool tablets, and time. A night beneath the stars. Now, step softly up the temple stairs. You're barefoot. The stone is warm from the day's sun, still gently radiating into your soles. You reach the top, a quiet rooftop open to the sky. There are no crowds, just one scribe, kneeling beside a shallow bowl of water, using it to reflect the stars. He doesn't speak, but you feel his calm. Above you, the night stretches deep. The Milky Way is a soft brushstroke across black velvet. You lie back. The wind is light, the silence complete. And for a moment, you feel as they felt, small, still, part of something vast and rhythmic and endlessly peaceful. Asleep wrapped in linen, the king's astronomers slept in soft linen, cooled by temple shade. Oh, they were fed well, respected, protected. They had no blisters from clay, no back pain from markets, but even they, with their knowledge of eclipses and oracles, could not escape the slow passage of time. Some of their tablets still exist today, buried for thousands of years in the sands near Hiller, Iraq. Some say they knew when eclipses would happen 18 years in advance. But they didn't write stories. They didn't write about their own lives. They just recorded the sky. Faithfully, patiently, sleepily, the rhythm continues, and now the stars turn slowly over Babylon. The ziggurat casts a long shadow across the sleeping city. The potters are gone. The king sleeps. The vines of the hanging garden sway in the stillness. And on a high rooftop, an astronomer makes one final mark. Tomorrow, he'll rise early. He'll check the moons again. He'll predict. He'll listen. But for now, all is quiet, and the rhythm of their lives becomes the rhythm of your breath. Slow, gentle, endless. And now, Babylon sleeps. The potters have closed their kilns. The scribes have stacked their tablets. The stars have faded behind the morning haze. And the city, vast, layered, ancient, is silent once more. You've wandered her streets, felt the grit of clay beneath your fingers, listened for justice beneath Hammurabi's carved laws, breathed the perfumed mists of fabled gardens, and looked up from a temple rooftop where time is measured in stars. This is the rhythm of the past, not told in battles or kings alone, but in quiet mornings and dusty alleys. In the small, repeating things that made up a life, then and now so different from your world, yet somehow not so far. They too woke to worries, to aches, to work left undone. They too longed for sleep, for meaning, for stillness. And here you are, centuries later, lying in the quiet, letting their story become your lullaby. The sand covers all time, like sand, buries everything. Every pot, every garden, even the coat of kings. But tonight, gently, you brushed that sand away, and beneath it, found the soft echo of lives once lived. Ordinary, uneasy, beautiful. Just like yours. Drift away now. Let the rhythm of their lives become the rhythm of your breath. Inhale, like a river winding past Babylon's bricks. Exhale, like smoke rising from a kiln, curling into sleep. Inhale, as Venus returns, steady in her path. Exhale, as dreams grow from the soil of old stories. You are safe now. You are soft in the dark, and time has no claim on you here. Just breath, just sleep, just silence. Good night from Babylon. Good night from the gardens. Good night, gentle listener.